Back in 2019, before this car was available for sale, there was a lot of spy photos with this car with a manual transmission. And then we got to launch and there was no manual transmission, and the comments were, it's a BMW and there's no manual transmission. Well, hallelujah. 3 years later, we finally get a manual transmission. So we're gonna take it out on track today, do a quick little street drive and see if this thing is any good. So they gave us a little road course to go on here, which is filled with cones, interestingly enough. Probably not the way I'm gonna drive around the city exactly, but this manual transmission is quite good. If you've driven some other BMW manuals in the past, you might have noticed that they're kind of vague, a little bit rubbery feeling. This has got none of that. I had a BMW 1M previously, and I thought that had a very good manual transmission, and this is kind of its equal in some capacities. And what I mean by that is it's very positive. It's very easy to shift it. There's no rubbery feeling to it. The clutch is quite easy to use. It's like a very enjoyable transmission. I just wish they, had come out with it early on. But I've got to say, I actually do love the automatic Supra, even though I'm a real hardcore save the manuals kind of guy. It's a very good automatic, but this is a really good manual. If you've been waiting for the manual, I know the Z came out, and maybe that might have something to do with why there's now a manual Supra. This tickles my fancy, I guess you could say. So just in terms of driving around the road, they've revised the suspension a little bit this year. It has revived dampers. I think the springs might be a little bit different too. They've got some different tuning on it, and just driving around on this quote-unquote road course, which is really just a ring road around the track. The ride quality is pretty good. This is probably not the best place to really talk about ride quality, but it seems pretty good. And this is like a very, this would be like a very nice daily. I have a Supra. I have a Supra automatic, 2020. You can make a ton of power with these cars, and 382 horsepower, and this feels like plenty. But man, this is a nice manual. It has some specific programming in it, which is designed to aid with reducing oversteer, basically, because these cars love to oversteer, especially snap throttle off oversteer. So this is supposed to help with that. So I think let's go and take a quick little segment on the track and see how it is in a more challenging environment than just driving around the track. 2023 Supra manual, inline 6, 382 horsepower. Finally, we get a manual, hallelujah. So this has got automatic rev matching, and we're gonna check that out in a second. Track out. So I've got a 2020 Supra, which I really enjoy driving, and I do take it to the track. Sorry for all the stuff flying around the car here. I'm still in third, but I'll do a downshift in a second and just see how this thing rev matches on its own. It's a quick car, that's for sure. All right, so here we go, cones. Ooh, it did a nice job of rev matching on its own. This transmission is really sweet, actually. A very positive engagement and pretty good clutch feel. And they've got this new traction control program on here, which apparently is tuned just for the manual. Brake hard, a little pushy, but that's kind of expected. Third, oh yeah, nice auto rev matching for me. I kind of dig that. So this car definitely feels more refined than my 2020. Now I've got some springs in my 2020, so I'm not like the best judge of how different the car is. But the damping is pretty good. They've changed the valving in here for 23, so it seems to be a little bit firmer than the 21 that I drove. It seems to be a little bit more firmly damped. They've changed the steering a little bit too. It's still a little bit too light for my taste. I think the steering is better in the GR Corolla that I just drove. So they got a new traction control system in here also for the manual. So VSC also intervenes fairly early, I would say. They've apparently done some tuning to make it so that people don't spin out, I guess, if they're driving kind of wildly on public streets. And so this definitely intervenes pretty early, but it's more, I'd say the intervention is more subtle than it was in the past. It's definitely more Porsche-like in its intervention, which is a good thing. And that rev matching just makes it too easy. So yeah, if I get on the throttle early, like that, the car is very stable. It's definitely not trying to get away from me. The back end feels extremely planted. Ooh, a little push through there. But yeah, when I get on the throttle, it just puts down the power quite effectively. I'd say it puts down the power better than it did in the past. So perhaps there is something to this VSC mode that they've done some enhancement on. In fact, I think it is. I think for most people, they've made it an easier car to drive. Mechanically, this is about the same as it always has been. 382 horsepower, inline six, fair amount of torque. Feels pretty peppy. And this manual transmission, it's really nice. It's a joy to shift this thing. So finally, we get the manual transmission that everyone has been asking for since the beginning of time, it seems. And it's really good. It's enjoyable to drive. It's something I would definitely use as a daily driver. And if you're new to the manual, I think you'll find this super easy to use. Now, pricing starts at $52,500 for the base version of the inline six. That's the only way you can get the manual. There's also a special limited run called the A91MT. That starts at $58,345. And with that, you can get this gorgeous new tan hazelnut interior. You can also get the hazelnut interior with a new color called See You Later Copper. For 2023, they have made some small mechanical changes to the steering, which does make it a little bit better. We've also got a brand new JBL audio system, which is 12 speakers, which was one of my complaints as an early 2020 owner. The audio system kind of sucked. The A91 is a limited 500 model run, probably going to be a little bit difficult to get one. But the big picture here is that Toyota has made some pretty significant improvements, but they're subtle over the last couple of years. And this new traction control system and stability is really something that is kind of a big deal for most drivers, especially with the manual transmission. What it does is when you are ham-fisted and let's say you're in the middle of the corner and you mash the throttle and you apply too much power, normally you'd get a pretty big slide, you get some pretty big oversteer. In this case, it manages to reduce that or eliminate that without feeling like you're getting a big power cut. And when I said in the video it feels like a Porsche, that's because you don't really feel it intervening and it feels very natural. And I think it's going to be a lot safer for most drivers and it doesn't really spoil the fun. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe if you did. And there's another video on screen right here. Thanks for watching.